grace than the issues that we're facing. God has more grace than racism and sexism and classism. God sent me to tell you that no matter what is sent our way to feel overwhelming and that's hard for us to overcome, God of all grace can see us all the way through. I want to submit today, while when I'm pondering, as we still in the throes of this day, as we're trying to represent what it means to stand in the footsteps of those who gone before us, maybe the relevant question we ought to wrestle with today is, if God hasn't removed the suffering, what is he producing through it? If God has not taken us out of these oppressive systems, what is God doing? And I'm here to suggest to you today that we learn something about the grace of God. God's grace expounds and abounds in moments of suffering. Can I give it to you what the text tells us? Can I share with you the profound implications of this benediction? Can I tell you what makes Peter say with confidence the power of this blessing? Can I tell you that you are blessed to be better even after all of this? His first thing I'm going to suggest for you today, the first thing that I want you to put in the pen deposit with you is, the first thing you need to know is that the grace of God calls us. It's right there in verse 10. Hey, but the God of all grace, who hath called us into eternal glory by Christ Jesus. Do you see that right there in the text? He begins this benediction with a deliberate contrast. Notice what he says. That simple word, but profound word, but connects this blessing to the preceding discussion, which discussed suffering and talked about resistance and spiritual opposition. Watch this. I appreciate what Peter does. Peter does not deny the reality of hardship. Instead, he reorients the believer's attention from the struggle to the source. He says, yes, it is clear that there is suffering. Yes, it is clear that there is pain. Yes, there is clear that there is problems. But it ought to have a few people that can thank God for the buts of God. God interrupts our struggles. God intervenes in those moments to remind us that while you're focused on this, don't get it twisted. God is still doing some work. That's a powerful conjunction, but implies that no matter what you have experienced before the but, that there's a shift coming. And I wish I had someone that can celebrate the fact of a God that intervenes with shifts. God is a God that in the middle of your trouble gives you a but. And watch what Peter does. God is named here. Watch the particularities. He says, the God of all grace. This title is unique in the New Testament and intentionally comprehensive. Grace here is not limited to forgiveness or salvation alone. No, in Peter's theology, grace is God's active, sustaining power that upholds believers in weakness, that strengthens them under pressure, and completes what is suffering threatens to unravel. Here's the good news about grace. Grace isn't just meant to save you, it's also meant to sustain you. God's grace is what keeps you when you can't keep yourself. And notice what he calls grace. He says all grace, which means there is no gap between what life demands and what God supplies. Can I tell you what Peter is trying to get you and I to understand is that grace will never run out. It is an inexhaustible gift that God graces you. You're going to have some issues, but there's more than enough grace. You're going to have some problems, but there's more than enough grace. It's as if God is saying that no matter what you encounter in life, my grace is sufficient. My grace is what's going to keep you. My grace is what's going to abound in your life. It will overflow even in suffering. It will come to pass even in your struggles. And I ought to have somebody that can be grateful for sustaining grace. You look back at your life, can I tell you, there's never been a time that grace has run out. You ain't got to go back and get a new piece of grace.